Hello, and today we're going to be doing a review for the play called The Importance of Being Ernest by Oscar Wilde. Now, this play is about two gentlemen who are not called Ernest, who pretend to be called Ernest to impress two women. So, let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy. So the play starts off with a young gentleman who lives in a flat in London called, well, everyone calls him Aggie. Now, Aggie is roughly around 27, 28, a gentleman of considerable wealth who has a few servants. And he is awaiting the arrival of his aunt Agatha and his cousin Gwendolyn, when a knock comes to the door and his servant brings in a friend called Ernest, who's really called Jack. Now, Ernest comes in and he says, how are you? What's going on? He goes, what are you doing? Aggie's like, what are you doing here? You're not meant to be here. You're not meant to be here for a couple of days. We've got an arrangement. And Ernest is like, no, I hear that your cousin Gwendolyn is coming. How I love your Gwendolyn. And Aggie's like, nope, my aunt Agatha will never allow it. To which point Aggie says, Ernest, dear chap, I found something of yours, I believe. It's a silver cigarette box, and it says in it the name Jack. Actually, it says the name Uncle Jack. Now, who is Jack? And Ernest is like, well, my real name is Jack, you see, and I live an incredibly boring life in the country, and when I feel that boredom creeping up on me and I cannot handle it anymore, I decide that my brother Ernest, who lives in London, needs to be looked after and taken care of and so forth. So I am able to come up to London and spend as much money as I like, go to nightclubs, go to restaurants, go to discos, go to wherever I like. And Aggie's like, oh, so, who is this person? But who is this aunt, who is this Celia person that has sent her Uncle Jack this cigarette case? Jack says, well, she is my aunt. And throughout this conversation, they pass each other about, talking about what really going on. And then Aggie says, so you are a bumbling. What do you mean? He goes, well, you have your so-called brother Ernest, who lives in London, who needs your help occasionally. Well, I have a friend called Bumbling, who, when I wish to leave London, I go to the countryside and see my good old friend Bumbling. Yes, well, I suppose so. So, at this point, Aggie says, well, when are you going back to the countryside? Well, I'm going to the countryside this weekend, you see. Go back home, spent a week in London, I'm going to go back for a couple of days, see what's going on, all of that. So, then Aggie's aunt Agatha arrives with Gwendolyn, and he's already arranged to take Aunt Agatha into the next room to play her some music while Gwendolyn and Ernest talk. And they're talking about, I love you, my dear, I love you. Could you ever marry me? And she said, yes, of course. I could only ever marry a man called Ernest. What do you mean? You could never marry a man that's not called Ernest? Quite so. Ernest is such a name that you feel that you trust. And then the whole thing starts thinking, oh dear, what am I going to do? My name isn't really Ernest. But by this point, Aunt Agatha comes back in, and she finds out that they're engaged, and she goes ballistic, and she says, no, I refuse, get to the car, go, all that. And she says, you have to come around, and you have to answer some questions, and I will find out if you're suitable for the list that I've drawn up for possible husbands of my daughter Gwendolyn. So he does, and he's questions like, how much do you earn in a year? What sort of land or houses do you own? All that sort of thing. Then, the next day, he's travelling down to the countryside to his house. And unbeknown to him, Aggie has already left. And Aggie is on his way to Jack/Ernest's country house. And out in the garden is Cecilia with her governess, who is teaching her lessons, French, German, other languages and other subjects that a young lady would be expected to learn in the 1880s, 1890s. So, and Aggie arrives, says, Cecilia, I believe I'm your Uncle Jack's brother, terrible brother, Ernest. And everyone's all a bit shocked, because they're all like, oh dear, we've never met him before, but we've heard such terrible things about him, he's such a rotter. Now, when Aggie and Jack were talking, Jack has decided that it's time to kill Ernest, to stop him from ever coming back to London. So he decides to say, I've killed him. Or no, he's been killed. He's died of a chill in France. Oh dear. So, when Jack arrives, he walks in to find Aggie and his niece in deep conversation, and he sends her away with her governess and says to Aggie, what the hell are you doing? Why are you pretending to be my brother Ernest? I'm going to tell people that he's dead. He died of a chill in France. You told me to tell him this. And he says, well, it's the miracle. I didn't die. It was a bit of a practical joke, actually. And it's all basically about how now Aggie is now in love with Cecilia, who is Jack's niece. Then we find out that Cecilia's governess wrote a story years and years ago, and she lost it. Quite sad, of course. Then, back to the main story. Gwendolyn arrives, and with Aggie and Jack both away with the vicar trying to get themselves christened with the name of Ernest, Gwendolyn and Cecilia meet, and they start talking about their potential husbands, Ernest. And of course, they believe they're going to marry the same man, because they're both called Ernest. And so they get very angry, and when the two men arrive back, not being christened, being called Ernest, they arrive and they are flobbing. Oh no, what's going on? Our two worlds and our cunning plans have been discovered and destroyed, and they come clear. And they do come clear. And then just after all of this has been cleared up and everything like that, and they're about to declare themselves to get married and talk to the vicar, Aggie's Aunt Agatha arrives to stop Gwendolyn from marrying, and she notices Cecilia's governess, who used to work for her, and says, "Where have you? Tell me! What happened to the bag?" Because earlier on in the story, Jack tells a story about how he was found as a baby in a black leather handbag at a train station going down the Brighton line. And in Cecilia's governess's book, she'd she'd accidentally misplaced the baby and the script. And she'd misplaced them both. And it all clicks. Jack is that baby. And for the final bit of the play, it is all about Aggie's Aunt Agatha telling Jack who he really is. And he's like, "Well, please tell me, what is my actual real name? Please tell me." And she says, "Your real name is Ernest." And he says, "I don't need to change my name, I've been Ernest all the time." And that is the end of the play, The Importance of Being Earnest. Thank you very much, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.